And that is my fault, except for the bed thing, because that really was you.
Welcome, stalkers, soldiers, and Susan Twist, to episode 513 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 25th of May, 2024, and featuring 73 Yards, written by Russell T. Davies, and starring Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, briefly, and Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and I am so happy that rain came and the 95-degree days stopped because I'm running out of money to buy coconut water. With me are co-host Alex Fireheart.
Hello.
And technical director Mad Matt Winchell.
Yes, I seem to be solo tonight.
How's it going this week?
Work's been wild again because of the Memorial Day coming up. I've never seen so many bratwursts, sausages, and hot dogs being sold all at once.
Oh, that's right. I wasn't here last week, was I?
Nope. You haven't been here
So
for
yeah,
at least
so
a week.
yeah, so I was out and about for between a week and a half and 2 weeks. First, I went to a conference where I was presenting some of my research. This is not what I normally go to, but it's in the it was hosted by the university that I just left, that I spent 3 years at. So I knew that I could, stay with a friend, and it was very cheap to attend. If I had to pay for a hotel, I would not have gone there. After that, I went on a family trip. So my grandmother died in 2022. And so this is the first time that my father and uncle were able to afford to make the trip up to bury the ashes. So they picked me up on the way. So they had about 24 hours of driving. I only had about half that each direction. Stayed with other family members during that time, and mostly just did like family get-togethers. Got to talk to my sister for the first time in a while, things like that. Then we had a 15-hour drive to my home, longer to to the house where my father and uncle live, on Sunday. And then mostly I've been fighting the heat ever since. So the past few days have been the first ones where I was like, oh, there are temperatures below 90.
Occasionally.
And as of the last time I looked, next week looks like it'll even be below 80. So knocking on wood there, but hoping that's the case.
As for me, we have officially signed up for the duplex that we're going to move into. That should be happening next month. We've already started moving a few things here and there. I'll literally be 5 minutes away from work, so I can actually do setup a lot more easily right after work. And we won't have to wait until 10:30, 11 o'clock to get going.
Right.
Trying to think what else have I got going on. So I tried starting to play some of my old Game Boy games again. Just had an itch for some old retro stuff because modern phone games suck. The only good one I've honestly kept on to is Dragon Quest, which is technically a slightly upgraded Dragon Warrior from the NES. Well, I find out that my 2 Game Boy Colors that I have, I got a second one because the original one's speaker is busted. Suddenly both of their start and select buttons don't want to work. Not sure what else to do. I looked around a bit and I found my SP, which plays Game Boy Advance and regular Game Boy and Game Boy Color stuff. Realized it still has a battery issue. Went looking online and found for $10 a battery replacement with the screwdriver I need. It came in a day early, and I've already got it recorded and already replaced it. And so far, I believe it's still showing me a green light. Yep, just turned it on. So it's already doing better than the previous battery. The previous battery, when I got it out, I put a flat object on top of it and definitely could see that it's starting to bulge. So that battery's dead. Outside of work, also being hectic. I'm not gonna keep this circuit talk. I'm just gonna briefly state it that I played a game called Prison City. It's a retro style, like 2D shoot 'em up platformer, kind of like Contra, if you will. Lots of references for like movies and other sci-fi stuff from the 80s and so forth. And as much as I liked it, about the 3rd or 4th level in, it just started killing me constantly for no apparent reason when I finally got to the boss. So it's just like, we went from Castlevania hard to Battletoads hard. Battletoads hard can suck my peen. I'm not going to keep wasting my time on a game that's going to be that difficult all the dang time. No thanks. That's pulling teeth. That's literally trying to make this into a second job. I don't need a second job. So I'm going to try and figure out what the next game is going to be for my solo play streams. So that was sadly a one and done. Trying to think if there's anything else. Oh yeah, I got the replacement car. I don't think Bill was there for that. I've not looked it up what all the information is. It is a Honda Civic 1998.
Okay.
It still runs, and it's
That
got
car's
a
old
hell
enough
of
to
a
drink.
speaker system.
Yeah.
What was that?
Speaker system. I said that car's old enough to drink.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm guessing that speaker system is connected to cassette player.
No. CD player.
Oh. Okay.
It does have the CD player. I did try trying to connect my phone to it because apparently it has a Bluetooth. The Bluetooth doesn't want to see it. And there's also
It's
a
98
USB.
with a Bluetooth?
Yep, and it also has a USB port. Tried hooking that up, and all it'll do is charge my phone.
Gotcha. Still better than nothing.
So it is what it is. It's just, I'm stuck with the CDs. Not that I can say I mind it much because that speaker system is thudding. I'll sit there idling, and as long as the car itself isn't making the shaking sounds, the speaker system will. I'd watch as my little mirror vibrates from the beat of music. I think that's all the big stuff that's been happening for me lately. Yeah. So, Alex?
I mean, fairly uneventful for me, aside from just my sleeping habits getting messed up. But I guess the one big thing that I refrained from bringing up last week because it was, 3 episode reviews in one. Prior to that week, I have been trying to get, and I brought it up in text, so you'll both know, but I decided to buy subscription stuff for Star Wars The Old Republic, just to like the one-off stuff and because I figured, well, it's been a while. I'll get access to the newer stuff and then just let it revert back to preferred status. Didn't work. Like, I could buy it but not access it. So then I've been trying to get it sorted through their official support email, which I didn't even know was still used, given they don't seem to advertise it anywhere anymore. And they've also shuffled me over to EA's stuff. Basically, it's been like 2 weeks, and only now are they maybe finally going to get around to actually doing something.
Jesus.
And ultimately, and I knew this was going to be the case anyway, but because they would not let me, because I'm trying to get rid of one of my old emails, so I'm trying to disconnect it from everything, like update it to new ones, or if I can't get rid of it. One of the accounts that I had to get rid of because they wouldn't let me change the email was my EA account. And my EA account was attached to my Star Wars The Old Republic account. Turns out, once that happened, I can't buy anything for that game anymore on that account. So
Slow
they're
clap.
going to have to... That being said, so I can still get it. Thankfully, this is one of the thankful part of it, that I got it through Steam rather than through that specific account. Not that I would have been able to anyway, because the only reason I got it through Steam was because I literally could not buy it through their through the game's official website. Is they were
When
basically
I subbed,
like...
I always bought. When I subbed, I always went through Amazon because there were the packets that included the free coins or whatever the currency was.
Yeah, cartel coins. I mean, like, you get them for being subscribed anyway, depending. You get like a certain amount each
Oh yeah,
month.
I mean the bonus, like bonus ones.
Yeah. They... Yeah, because it was through Steam, they were like, okay, disconnect Steam from that account, make a new one, and link your Steam to that, and we'll unlock it for that. So that does mean that I will be losing all of the progress and all that I have for this other one. But at this point, the game has changed so much, and I haven't touched those two. Like, I only have like 2 level 50s and one who was getting kind of close to level 50. Aside from that, everyone is like off the first planet, but that's it. And I'm, in hindsight, I'm like, you know what? If I have to start over again, whatever. Like, it's been so damn long since I've touched these characters that going back through again to get new characters or just redos of the old ones through to level 50, whatever. If that's what happens, it's what happens. Because, like, at this point, I'll just be like, I would still be getting what I paid for it. It'll just be through a different account. I'll take it. Because, like, someone that I kept DMing about it was like, well, clearly they could just link a new EA account to that, right? And I'm like, well, could and will is a is a stark difference. Like, maybe they could have a policy where they're like, yeah, but we're not going to, though. So yeah, so long as I eventually get what I paid for, that'll be cool. Although I did predict correctly that the final of the original Thrawn trilogy books would show up before this was dealt with. I had to go and pick that up from the post office as well, because they tried delivering it when I'd slept in. And even though other people would have been awake at the time, I think it's one of those things where they just decided, we're not going to try. We've got too much shit to deliver today, so we're just going to skip you. So, oh well. But I did get it, like, the next day, so. I still need to fucking read those damn things. Like, I started reading one, got like a chapter in, and then just kind of I get so easily distracted that I haven't gone back to them yet. So
eventually
I'll have those to have Geek Talk stuff about, but we'll see how long that'll take. Yeah, I think that's about all I've got.
Alrighty then. Now, of course, you wrap up as I remember. I need to tweet. Oh, wrong button. Nope, both sounds played. Oh well. On tonight's show, we have birthdays and news. We have a little bit of extra news because I stuck in a piece that we didn't have time for last week due to our triple feature. We've got some geek talk, one review of Shame. Then we have our episode summary, review, final thoughts, and ratings. And depending on how quickly we get through all of that, we may, since we're halfway through the season, we should probably make time to make predictions. But that's assuming we actually get through everything in a reasonable amount of time. So without further ado, on to Alex with the birthdays.
Okay, so starting on the 19th of May, we have Michael Wisher, who was Davros in Genesis of the Daleks, and a Dalek voice in the late Third Doctor era and several small roles. I would have been 89, but died in 1995 at the age of 60. On the 20th of May, we have John Lucarotti, who is the writer of the first 3 Doctor Who pure historicals, I'm going to assume, unless it was just historical in a general sense.
Pseudo-historicals weren't invented for years after that.
Yeah. Would have been 98, but died in 1994 at the age of 68. On the 21st of May, we have Juliet Cohen, who played Chrissy Jackson in the first series of Sarah Jane Adventures, turned 50. On the 23rd of May, we have Don Warrington, who played Rassilon in 5 Big Finish dramas, and the president in Rise of the Cybermen, The Age of Steel, turned 73. So that was the president of the UK, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember because it's like in that alternate timeline they have a president instead of a prime minister. But in any case, on the 24th of May, we have Jim Broadbent, who was the 11th Doctor in Curse of Fatal Death, among many other things. Turned 75. Also on the 24th, we have Graham Williams, who was the Doctor Who producer for seasons 15 through 17. Would have been 79, but died in 1990 at the age of 45. And finally, we have on the 25th of May, Sir Ian McKellen, who played the Great Intelligence in The Snowmen, but is better known to general audiences as Magneto in the X-Men movies and Gandalf the Grey and White in the Middle-earth stuff. Turned 85, and apparently he's going to be in Deadpool versus Wolverine, Deadpool X Wolverine. So
I knew there was another big role that I knew him from that I wasn't remembering when I wrote that list. Good catch.
I mean, he's another one of those actors where we could be here for days listing off stuff, but those are definitely the 2 most mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
So happy birthday to Michael, John, Juliet, Don, Jim, and Graham, and Sir Ian.
All right, moving on to our episode news. We start off with the ratings update. The overnight figures for Boom are in with 2.04 million UK viewers, down 15% from The Devil's Cord, which is not bad considering, it's going from the 2-parter to the next episode. The 7-day totals are 4.01 million for Space Babies and 3.91 million for The Devil's Cord, making these episodes the 9th and 11th most watched programs of the week, according to The Barb. Following Eurovision, Red Eye, Britain's Got Talent, Race Across the World, 2 episodes of Coronation Street, Blue Lights, Clarkson's Farm, and Emmerdale. Numerically, these are the lowest ratings Doctor Who has had since 1989. Ordinarily, however, in terms of their ranking, Doctor Who is as strong as it's been, pretty much the entire time we've done the podcast, which suggests this may just be a drop in same week TV viewing overall.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's definitely one of those things of we're in the streaming age now, so that doesn't necessarily help. But also, I mean, Eurovision's on at the moment. That is probably gonna knock it a bit.
More and more people are of the mindset of just wait for episode 8 to come out and binge it at some point.
That being said, that's not the numbers they watch. Is after 8, it's what happens that week, and if it keeps dropping,
Yeah, but and that's, I'm very curious which they make their decisions on, because if they look at 9th and 11th most watched of the week, that's normal. There's no cause for concern. That's what Doctor Who's been the whole time we've done the podcast. But if they're looking at less than 4 million, that might scare them. And there's already people pushing both sides of the narrative, and ignoring the other side, to suit whatever supports their own view. So I'm just trying to give it as balanced as I can.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's hard to say. There's probably another numeric that BBC actually watches in the background too. Probably how much the money they make off of it, somewhere, somehow.
Yeah, like I could see something I could see is if TV ratings drop low enough, but the streaming numbers are high, that they'll never make public unless to brag that they're high. That they'll go, you know what? Let's just take it off at TV entirely and make it purely streaming.
And you know what? That's
possibly
probably
happening.
the article that I saw this week, but I forgot where I saw it. We don't have actual Disney Plus numbers, which is where the vast majority of Doctor Who viewers are going to come from nowadays.
Yeah.
But I think it's been doing pretty well on Disney Plus. But Disney Plus is never going to come out and say these are the 7-day viewing figures for a given episode.
Yeah. Like, I think the most we've ever had to say is it was number 1 in 3 countries for the week.
I've heard there's rumor mill stuff, but it's only rumor mill stuff, so can't really believe it right now until something actually does come out. So.
But yeah, we've just spent at least 5 minutes on what I thought was a 30-second blurb, so moving on. We have the cast list for Dot and Bubble. So I'll just go down to character names unless I recognize an actor. First off, we've got a brief synopsis. The world of Fine Time, a colony on an alien planet, seems happy and harmonious, but an awful terror is preying on its citizens. Lindy Pepper Bean, played by Callie Cook, must contend with an out-of-control, dangerous situation. A gurgling, slobbering, munching sound can be heard from around the corner, and her friends are mysteriously disappearing. Can the Doctor and Ruby make the denizens of Fine Time see the truth before it's too late? This sounds like Orphan 55. The way the trailers don't look similar at all, but the synopsis sounds like it.
Funnily enough, based purely on the next time on that we got after this episode, I saw someone say that this felt like it was going to be not like a direct 1-to-1 comparison, but the comparison they made was Blink, because this feels like it's going to be the Doctor and Ruby are just never really there.
The teaser we read off last week made it sound like Blink. And of course the publicity mill is saying that this is Black Mirror-esque. So let's see. Looking at the characters, we have Lindy Pepper Bean, Ricky September, Cooper Mercy, Harry Tendency. I'm noticing all of these last names are regular words. Hoochie Pie, Valerie Nook, Blake Very Blue, Gothic Paul, Dr. P, probably an unpopular person, Rotterdam Twin number 1 and 2, so these characters look like they're played by actual twins. Weatherman Will, Ellen K. Sullivan. Oh, that's a normal name. Penny Pepperbean, played by Susan Twist. So Susan Twist is related to the guest star in this one. Susie Pentecost and Brewster Cavendish. Sounds a proper British name.
I will say I find it kind of funny that the woman I keep making jokes looks like she's basically Gwen Stacy, has a very something that I could legitimately see a comic book character being named Lindy Pepperbean just sounds kind of like it would be a comic book character name. I mean, a bunch of these kind of do.
Gothic Paul could be a Spider-Man villain. All right, on to our next piece of news. The finale, the two-part finale, Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death, will be screened in UK cinemas on the 21st of June 2024. And let me see. Do I still have... Of course, I closed it because it was in a different browser. See if I can pull up the air dates real quick. Here we go. Thank you, Yahoo. So, okay, so The Legend of Ruby Sunday will air on the 14th. And then on the 21st, both Empire of Death will air and these two-parters will be screening. So everyone will see Ruby of Sunday first. Legend of Ruby Sunday first. And then Empire of Death will be at the same time for everybody. It's not like this gives them early viewing or anything.
Just a fancier place to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's a good it's a place to network with fans, right? Cosplay. A little hard to cosplay as these two because they actually change clothes. So you have to pick an episode to cosplay as. They're working with Cinema Live, which I'm not super familiar with, but which means it's probably not. I feel like by now there would have been a follow-up if this was coming to the U.S. It's not Fathom or anything, so we might not be getting it outside the UK.
I think once
unless
or
they come
twice.
up with another deal later. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think once or twice they've done that in Australia, but I think that was only ever for like the first episode. So with how the
Gotcha.
Disney Plus, it honestly wouldn't shock me if the only reason it's only in the UK is because it's Disney Plus internationally, and Disney are like, no,
Yeah.
it's us or that's it.
But yeah, the only time I've been to Doctor Who in cinemas was Day of the Doctor.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to alumni cast and crew news. So this we did not report on last week. This was an interview with Sophie Stone, reported in the Radio Times, and the main gist of this is basically that as a deaf actress, Doctor Who was the best experience that she's had. So basically giving a big up to the BBC for being inclusive. So these Sophie Stone worked in the 2015 episodes Under the Lake and Before the Flood. And let's see. She says she thinks that visibility on Doctor Who changed the landscape for any deaf viewers watching, especially deaf children. So often people think I can't hear you, therefore you're not intelligent, or that the quality of your voice equals the quality of how much you know, and actually it's a lie. And this, I mean, and as a social psychologist, I can say like there are studies. Even if you have a foreign accent, people think you're less intelligent. And so I can't imagine how much worse it must be if you're deaf or otherwise have a speech impediment related to, hearing or your ability to speak. It must be 10 times worse. Stone continued to show that in a character in a storyline, yes, it's sci-fi, yes, it's a fantasy world, but these people could be real people in your real life. Why not show somebody leading a team of hearing people and being the most intelligent person in the room? So a lot of this is about the positivity of representation. Um, let's see. And yeah, talking about it being a very positive example of a deaf person on TV. I'm pretty sure this article had things about behind the scenes as well. Let me see. Okay. Stone says the crew and creative teams beyond the episode were in close contact about accessibility requirements and had a deaf British Sign Language consultant on set who ensured that Stone's signs were being accurately picked up in the shots. So that the camera was focused properly, that it wasn't being obscured. BBC said, "What do you need? What can we provide for you? What kind of space do you want?" And we had an amazing deaf BSL consultant on set, and she ended up being very much part of the core team. So this, when people talk about accessibility in presentations and conferences and conventions and things like that, this is what they mean. Um, Okay, and this is just kind of talking about the consultant a bit and about how she did her job. Um, let's see. I'm just kind of skimming now for anything else because I'm not reading the whole article because it's a bit long. Um, okay, so yeah, so that's it's dang. Every time there's an image, I think it's the end of the episode, but it's not. Let's see. She mentions everyone's about to become deaf. Everyone could possibly lose their hearing or become disabled. Everyone is this far away from losing any kind of faculties. You're not always just born with it. It could happen tomorrow. What is in place to support you? And so that's more talking about representation. And I guess, okay, so this article was also written for Deaf Awareness Week, so that makes sense. But in general, just as a deaf person, she says both behind the scenes and on screen, BBC did a great job of dealing with the needs of deaf people.
Hmm.
All right, moving on to new release news. This is another one we did not report last week. So BBC Books is publishing a Doctor Who murder mystery written by Bonnie Langford, who of course played Mel in the 6th and 7th Doctor era. A band of killers, survivors with a secret, a death-defying murder mystery in space. When young Mel's business partner, Sabalam Glitz, embarks on yet another get-rich-quick scheme, it marks the start of an epic, death-defying murder mystery in space. So, this is set after Dragonfire. I don't think we've seen anything from that era of Mel. I think even Big Finish, if there's Mel that's older than that, she's returned to the TARDIS. So this is Mel and Glitz, and I'm pretty sure we've never seen that. The audiobook of Doctor Who Death in the Stars, written and narrated by Bonnie Langford, is out on 22nd October 2024. Does that mean it's only audio? Like there's a physical book in the picture, but there's no mention of the physical book release. So that's a little odd.
Maybe it's a matter of they haven't fully confirmed when a physical will be, so maybe
Possible, yeah.
they're just doing audiobook first.
And finally, Big Finish news. On the 21st of May, Big Finish released Missy Series 4, Bad Influence, written by David Quantick, Lou Morgan, and Freddie Valdosta, starring Michelle Gomez. I don't see anything particular worth remarking about there, so that is the end of our news.
Okay, yeah, very quickly. I can find a link somewhere to a book version, but there's no date given for that, so it must
Okay.
just be... and the format that I can see is only ebook, so maybe that's also why? I don't know.
Okay.
Weird that they would have a picture of a physical book if I can't seem to find one.
Right. unless the physical book doesn't exist and it's just a mock-up.
Maybe, yeah. Could be.
All right, we move on to Geek Talk. And I've noticed our Geek Talk goes much better if somebody who's not focused on tech also pays attention and makes sure they don't go over too long. So feel free to tell me to hurry up. But the first item is my first impressions of the Netflix Avatar: The Last Airbender series. So I was able to access Netflix using my aunt and uncle's account. I was not able to watch the full season, but I did see enough to give some impressions on the show. So first off, it's condensed into 8 episodes, and I think it focuses on the story currently of the first season of the original show. I did notice that they were trying to tell multiple stories at once. So you would take like 3 or 4 stories from the first half of the season, and those stories would kind of be told in the same episode or in the same two-parter. So I think that's their way of trying to be as faithful as they can. As for, I know some of the most criticized parts were things like, for example, cutting out Sokka's arc with, learning to be less sexist. So the Kyoshi Island part was a major part of what I watched, and I think it was shorter than the animated series. And what you mainly saw there was in the original, it was a combination Sokka becoming a better warrior, and Sokka learning to be less sexist, and Suki kind of learning to respect and care for him because he's, dropping his prejudices and learning. In this case, they really make it obvious that Suki is super sheltered. She's, doesn't seem to have ever met a teenage boy, has no knowledge of life outside the island, and is kind of smitten with Sokka and, trying to fight her urges throughout the episode. Sokka is really going from somebody with no warrior training or experience to actually learning to be a fighter in this episode. So, I would say it's not like they completely, dropped all meaning of this arc. Like, there's still, Sokka has an arc here, and it naturally leads into the relationship with Suki. But I do think that it was still a valuable message that was cut. Because, yes, there definitely was space that Sokka could have learned to be a little, more egalitarian. In fact, I think it's almost worse because basically it's the idea of gender is not even brought up. It's, his father put him in charge. Why did his father put him in charge? Why not one of the adult women that are in charge, that are still in the village? That's not even discussed. Whereas in the actual animated series, it was very clear this was a patriarchal custom, and that led to conflicts between Sokka and Katara. So the patriarchy is still there, but it's kind of ignored. So I think that's a missed opportunity. Another missed opportunity is, I think, a lot of the not all of them, but a lot of the child actors, I think, are just kind of flat, and this is always a risk of hiring children. In the animated series, between the animation and what was probably I didn't look this up, but knowing animation, there was probably an adult woman playing Aang, or at least somebody probably over the age of 12, who could make his dialogue seem a lot more natural. But actually seeing it come from the child actor, it really comes off as if he's reading from a script and not as if he's speaking normally. This is especially true when they introduce Azula, Ty Lee, and Mai. They're all kind of almost equally flat. It's spelled Mai, pronounced May, so I always get it wrong. But May is supposed to be very flat, right? She's like the goth, no affect girl.
Yeah.
So she's fine with that, but you can't really tell Ty Lee and Azula's personality in their introductory scene. And that's kind of, it's there's no point introducing them early if you're not actually going to introduce their personalities at the same time. And at first I was going to say, oh, this is just how the show is. And then in either the very next scene or the very next episode, they introduced Jet and his crew 1,000 times better than they introduced Azula and her crew. So that was poorly done. And I don't know if they improved that later on in the season. So far, if I were to give a verdict, I would say I think this is a fun thing for people who are already fans of the franchise to enjoy as kind of like extra ways to portray scenes they already care about. It's clear that the people working on this were fans in some capacity. But I don't think it's by any means should be somebody's first exposure to the franchise. I don't think it like replaces it in any way. I think it's just, it makes more sense to watch the animated and then also watch the live action. Which is also to say, despite its flaws, it is 1,000 times better than the movie that doesn't exist. And on to Alex with Tales of the Jedi.
Yep. I forget, like, going to those Star Wars marathons, like, weeks ago, which was also the reason that I wasn't here for Truth of Peladon, which I forget if I brought that up last week. But anyway, because of that, I've been in a Star Wars kick pretty much ever since. And part of that was finally getting around to watching Tales of the Jedi, like a week or so ago. And I find it interesting that an opinion that I had after I finished was very similar to opinions of people who had seen all of the Clone Wars stuff. Which was, I really liked the Count Dooku stuff, and while the Ahsoka episodes weren't bad, they felt kind of pointless. Like, they just felt like Dave Filoni being like, this is my OC, do not steal. She gets to be... Which, I could go on a, 20-minute rant about how I feel like Ahsoka kind of breaks canon in specific ways. Of why a lot of her character doesn't make sense.
Don't steal. By the way, this is terrible fan fiction from a person who should know better.
I mean, the stance seems to be that she's a good character, and I haven't seen enough to really say that she's bad. She's not badly written. It's just I don't know. The more I think about her character, the more it just goes this would have made a lot more sense if they were just friends instead of, oh, well, my character that I made up gets to be Anakin's Padawan. But anyway, and also the episodes are laid out weird because you have the first episode is Ahsoka related, then all 3 of Dooku's, and then the other 2 Ahsoka episodes. And I'm like, should have either just done either all 3 of one and then all 3 of the other, or alternate. Like, one of Ahsoka, one of Dooku, then back to Ahsoka, then Dooku, Ahsoka, Dooku. Like, something like that. To that end, I actually would have started with Dooku so you end on Ahsoka, so there's a bit more of a hopeful note to end on. Given Dooku's is showing not entirely how he falls to the dark side, but because we're skimming over some bits, but I mean, what I found funny was was watching it and going, huh, that Liam Neeson impression sounds a bit on point, and this Ian McDiarmid impression sounds really good. Turns out they just got those 2 actors.
Oh.
For this, which was oh, okay. I mean, Liam Neeson, Qui-Gon is only there for a couple seconds, at least where they would actually need Liam Neeson, because there's a scene that's set before they leave to go back to Naboo. And so he has an interaction with Dooku then. And like the first episode with Dooku, it's a far younger Qui-Gon when he's still a Padawan, so that makes sense. That's just someone else. But yeah, I would definitely say the Dooku ones are worth checking out. From what I've heard from people who have watched all of the Clone Wars, you're not really going to get much new information for Ahsoka if you watch the Ahsoka ones. So, yeah. I did also mean to watch Tales of the Empire, but I didn't get around to that, so maybe next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say it's still worth watching. But yeah, I got a hell of a lot more out of the Dooku stuff than I did the Ahsoka stuff. So yeah, that's about all I've got for that.
Good to know. Next, we have Across the Spider-Verse, another show, well, in this case, a movie I managed to pick up on Netflix. So this is the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, and it is really the Empire Strikes Back of its trilogy in multiple ways. So there's a time skip after Into the Spider-Verse. It's a lot darker than the first movie. It even ends on a cliffhanger with, at least one character in a dangerous situation. So, if it weren't for the fact that the Star Wars trilogy has kind of defined, sci-fi writing over the past few decades, I'd almost say it was a ripoff. But I think it's more just this is how we write trilogies nowadays. So yeah, it's basic. Well, I mean, they're both multiverse stories, but essentially, Spider-Man 2099 has been leading a team that's designed to basically keep the multiverse stable. So even though it's not a time travel story, changing the timeline or the canonical events can still cause paradoxes that can destroy a universe. So which makes me wonder if it was originally intended to be a time travel story. So the main conflict, and this is the main, thing that's been bigged up and even in the trailers, is that every spider person has a police captain who's close to them that dies. That is part of their growth. And that we even see an instance where preventing this in one universe causes a major incident that almost destroys that universe and requires a large team to come and fix it. And of course, as seen in the trailers, Miles is like, well, that's not happening. I'm not going to just stand back and let my dad die because you say it's fate. So that's the kind of the crux of the conflict. There are definitely personal conflicts in between. So there's definitely you're really focused on Miles' emotional state during the movie. I do think this one's almost a lot more just Miles. So at times, Miles is in conflict. Gwen has a lot of stuff, but she's in conflict with Miles instead of supporting him this time. And some of the other, characters support or are in conflict with him at different points. So rather than being a big team up, this is a lot more of Miles against everybody, to some extent. I feel like I like the first movie more, but that's partially because I have no closure on this. This ended on a cliffhanger, so I would need to see the final episode to really know how I feel about it a bit more. But it's also with the conflicts being all over the place and both sides having kind of valid positions. The first movie is a lot more clear cut. It's a lot easier to be like cheering on the good guy sort of thing. And the first movie is a lot funnier. They drop a lot of the comedy from this one. Just they try, but yeah, it's almost too dark for all the comedy. So I would prefer the first movie, but this one's still good, and I'm looking forward to the third one.
Alrighty.
Okay. Next on, we move to Matt's review of Shame for Boom.
Alrighty. So my review of Shame for Boom. Should I do the usual steps then?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
All right. So
You're not doing 10 things like Aaron did last time, so.
So general overall thing I liked. Actually, I kind of read into this one that there's a general message of not only just like the importance of fatherhood, but the importance of a father to do what's best, which is kind of a thing for me personally, a little bit. But yeah, just the overall like ending act is very much focused on a father, even though he's technically dead, trying to do the best he can to protect the people he loved, which is a very commendable thing. And especially how much he does and how much he's apparently still there to do things, even though he's apparently passed on. I thought it was an interesting and very telling message to have through that. Thing I least liked the most. So we got this corporation that we've not heard of before, but it's doing usual evil corporation things again. That's a tired old story, ain't it? And oh, lo and behold, they don't properly update their machines, and their machines go wacky, and the medic now just kills people.
I think that was less not properly updated and more that was kind of always intended by the manufacturer.
Most likely is intended by the manufacturer, yeah.
Yeah.
They're not going to update it. It's there to cause more people to die. Ooh. Evil, greedy corporations just murdering the people. Favorite scene? Oh, actually, there's a couple of good ones in this one. I'm trying to think of just one in particular. I guess I'll go with the scene where we see the huge amount of medics, or ambulances, I guess they called them, coming down, and then just as you think literally they're just done for with the thoughts and prayers constantly being chanted, all of a sudden you start seeing the glitch happen again. And slowly more and more happening, and then you suddenly realize, oh, wait, they haven't stopped the AI yet, the AI father yet. It seems like, and it keeps going, oh, yeah, he's taking over, and he's free again, and, oh, you're in trouble. And I don't mean the heroes. There was a very nice, sudden, slow. It took its time too to do it right to try and hide the fact that this is going to be a turnaround. It looked like the turnaround was that the hologram father had failed, but then it double turns around back on itself really nicely. Least favorite scene. Gosh darn it, that kid. Like, it felt like the child was a, 10-year-old plus trying to play a really annoying 5-year-old. And by really annoying, I have to say, have any of you watched the original Gamera movies?
No.
I don't think I've watched them directly. I think I've only seen scenes from them.
Let me put you this way. There's some kids in those original Gamera movies that are so gosh darn annoying, you start rooting for any bad things that happen to them. It got that bad that even Mystery Science Theater started rooting for kids getting hurt in the movie. It's that bad. That was very much starting to borderline happen here. I'm like, can we just do something to get rid of the child?
With Splice.
It's just like, yeah, it was spliced. For whatever reason, they wrote her really poorly. And it just got on my nerves anytime they focused on Splice. Like, outside of her answering basic questions from the adults. Like her constantly,
Mm.
like the fact that she can't seem to at least at the beginning understand that her dad was a hologram, even though he's freaking glowing.
I mean, I feel like I forget if we talked about it last week or if it was like a take I've seen elsewhere, but I can remember seeing some people assume maybe the character was meant to be younger.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I swear they wrote her like a 5-year-old, but even then, it's a really annoying 5-year-old.
Mm.
Oh. But anyways, yeah, moving on. So, general thoughts of it. I like the majority of what was going on with this episode, especially the focus on the Doctor and Ruby and their interactions with people coming in and out of the story. But I would also say not only was Splice an issue for me, but also the other characters occasionally doing really stupid things to pad out the story. Like the one guy just showing up randomly and just immediately opening fire. Although I understand at least a little bit panic, at least he should have tried to like talk her down if that was the issue. But no, he just goes full on blowing Ruby away, or at least as much as he could. The fact that these soldiers found civilians on the battlefield and are just literally shooting them in the arm, aka the Doctor, and trying to get them killed. Just a lot of little things like that just kind of just smack of what happened with the writing on this one. There's a lot of smart people doing really dumb things until it comes back to bite them.
I can already tell your rating is going to be different than the ones we've had so far.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff here, but there's also almost just as much bad stuff. But I'm going to say it wasn't quite that bad. So I guess then, speaking of which, I guess going to ratings, then I'm going to give this one 4?
4.0. So that changes the rating from 4.83 to 4.63. And let's see.
It's no longer in the very high.
Right. So that puts it at around number 48. And places it on par with Wild Blue Yonder, The Bells of St. John, The Ambassadors of Death, Image of the Fendal, The Creature from the Pit, and The Greatest Show in the Galaxy.
Actually, I think some of those are... Oh, they're tied with this one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd argue
It
some
is
of those
not
are better.
as good as Stolen Earth Journey's End, Kinda, Day of the Doctor, or The Curse of Fenric, and is better than The Ark, The Return of Dr. Mysterio, The Magician's Apprentice, which is familiar, The Invasion of Time, The Ghost Monument, and Arachnids in the UK.
And to bring up again how far of a decline in position it is. Last week, with the previous scores, it was sitting around number like 17.
Ew.
And it's now dropped to 40 something. So yeah.
Ew, no. You guys were really too kind.
17, yep.
I'm sorry. No, you guys were very kind to this thing. Mm-mm.
It was primarily me and Bill giving it a 5, and Aaron gave it a 4.5. So without the extra one to bring it down a bit, the average was high.
I think
Everybody
something...
needs a pooper. That's why they invited me. Party pooper.
I think some of the things we saw as intentional writing, you saw as bad writing. So there's that. All right.
It's not good.
I'm ready for
Don't
a
care if it's
countdown.
intentional. That's still not good.
Ready for a
Anyway.
countdown for the summary.
Countdown. All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. The Doctor and Ruby arrive in Wales. Ruby and the Doctor talk about the concept of Wales in general. The Doctor accidentally mentions a future Prime Minister by the name of Roger Ap Gwilliam, who apparently is a total nightmare. In the ensuing conversation, Ruby distracts the Doctor and he steps in a circle made of various pieces, which appears to be a fairy circle, which includes scrolls saying "I miss you" and "Rest in peace, Mad Jack." The Doctor vanishes, but Ruby sees a woman in the distance. She tries to approach the woman to ask if she's seen the Doctor, but never gets any closer. Ruby then encounters a hiker with a very familiar face and asks her to speak to the woman. The hiker agrees, but after speaking to the woman becomes terrified and runs away. Ruby then goes to a local pub where the locals continually mock her because they're used to being treated as a backwoods. One of the regulars at the pub speaks to the woman and then refuses to come back. This results in Ruby getting kicked out of the pub. After returning to London, Ruby speaks with both Carla and with Kate Stewart about the woman. Both speak to the woman and then refuse to have any more to do with Ruby. A time-passing montage happens during which Ruby struggles with a series of boyfriends due to her constantly thinking about the woman. During one of these conversations, Ruby notices a TV interview with none other than Roger Ap Gwilliam. Ruby goes and volunteers for his campaign team, and Gwilliam is elected Prime Minister. At a speech, Ruby's colleagues tell her that Gwilliam is going to gain control of Pakistan's nuclear arsenal within the next week, which leads Ruby to position herself 73 yards away so that the woman will arrive to convince Gwilliam to run away. We cut to an older Ruby who visits the TARDIS and then later is dying in a hotel room. The woman is still there following her, or staying 73 yards away. Suddenly, the woman approaches Ruby in the hospital room. We then cut back to the Doctor and Ruby arriving in Wales, and this time we see old Ruby at a distance, and she looks exactly like the woman. She warns them not to step on the fairy circle, and they don't. The end.
All right. So you got that in 2 minutes, and I believe it was 28 seconds.
Not bad.
Mm-mm.
All
Not bad
right.
at all.
And, well, I should have said the name of the episode before starting the review, but I did say it during the review. 73 yards. All right. So now it is time for the pecking order. What do we like about this episode, starting with Alex?
I guess I'm just gonna go with Millie Gibson in general, like as Ruby. Like this episode does absolutely hinge on her acting, and she does a really good job. There are like minor quibbles I have here and there. With like I almost kind of wish she'd somehow deepened her voice a little, because when we get to the Roger Ap Gwilliam stuff, she's supposed to be 41 or like thereabouts, but she still sounds 19, so it's a bit but it's a very minor quibble. But otherwise, yeah, like even if she's not sounding older, she's definitely giving off the vibes pretty well of someone who has lived a life at this point. But yeah, it was a very, very solid performance, which, again, given this is a Dr. Light episode, it absolutely had to be, because if he hadn't delivered, then this whole thing would have fallen apart.
All right, Matt.
Yep.
What did you like about 73 yards?
Trying to think of one thing to bring up overall. I want to say the mystery, but actually that's one of my turnoffs is the reveal. Um,
Yeah, both can be true.
I want to say, I actually I want to say that at least the writing was really good on this one as a general overall thing. Like as Alex mentioned, the head hinges on one character being really good and acting it out very well, but also if the writing for her, much less everything else going on around her, flubs, it's all just a absolute garbage show, and it's going to be a hard sit for anybody. But they honestly did a pretty good job. They had some interesting interactions. They kept a decent flow going for it, and even if I feel like the payoff wasn't that good, I feel like the rest of it was actually pretty good up to that point. At least kept me
Okay.
curious up until the very end.
Mm-hmm. So Alex says the acting, Matt says the writing, and I'm leaning more towards the directing. So basically, I just said just wrote down the atmosphere. It gives a very effective, creepy vibe, and I can see why a lot of people are calling it a short horror movie. It feels like the kind of story you would share at a campfire, or that you would read in like a horror magazine. Sort of thing, or a book of horror of scary stories, at least
Yeah.
up until a certain point. So I would say that's mostly the first half of the episode. But
I do know I saw someone joke that it's like, wow, someone must have been watching like uh early mid 2000s J horror before doing this. Hair covering her face and all that, I guess, is part of where they got that from. And like
okay,
like this faceless entity at a distance. Which, I
Mhm.
mean, an entity following you at a distance also makes me think of It Follows, even though I've never seen the movie. I know roughly what it's about, so...
All right, what do we dislike about the episode, Alex?
Okay. This is going to be a lot easier, because to be honest, even after seeing this the first time, I started picking the episode apart in my head at work, and that was all I could think about. But yeah, hey
Try
Russell.
to keep it to one thing, although
Yeah, it's like Russell, can we can we not can we just leave things that should be in Torchwood to Torchwood, please? Because that whole kind of like, it's not even really a subplot, but it's more than just a single scene. That's why I'm bringing it up here instead of there.
Mhm.
Of the implied sexual assault of Marty.
Serial assault, if
Like,
that's
yeah,
what's
yeah,
happening, yeah.
right. So it's like,
And also considering how recently the Diddy raid was, it's already fresh on everybody's mind.
yeah. And like, politicians doing that is nothing
Oh
new
shit, yeah,
anyway.
Trump just had a recent case about that too.
Right. And it's just like, again, it's why like when I was DMing about this with Bill, and I'm just like, I don't need this in Doctor Who. Torchwood? Yeah, fine. That would have made sense. If this had been a Torchwood episode about Gwen Cooper, this would have made a hell of a lot more sense to have that aspect in it.
Yeah, that a lot. On that note, a
To a
lot of
point.
people do the "How will I explain this to my kids?" Yeah, explain to your kids why Marty looked terrified when when she was told that her boss had requested her for a party that nobody else was invited to.
Yeah. Like, it's like, again, that's the funny thing, is like that's part of where even I'm coming from. Is like, this is inherently, like, I would argue Modern Who has never really been for kids outside of some of Russell's worst work, funnily enough. But World War III, Aliens in London, even Space Babies feels very, this is an episode for kids, haha. But then you go from that to this, and it's Like that is an aspect of the episode that didn't need to be there. It really did, and I've seen other people say basically the same thing of like, it feels like it's there so we can be like, see, he is a really horrible person. And I'm like, one, he's a politician, so you didn't really need to do that much convincing.
Nah.
Two, there's already talk of him wanting to, have nuclear codes. So, again, you didn't really need to have him, like, continuously abusing this one poor woman to, like, again, off screen, it's more implied than outright stated, or we don't actually see any of it, thank God. But it's still
Thank
just
God.
like, we did not need that
So
here in
my
this show.
my issue with that, and like this was actually saved for my final thoughts because I have so many other issues before it in this episode. But my issue with that was more the fact that like Ruby makes it very clear that she knew and she could have done something about it, but she didn't because she had to wait until the woman could solve her problem for her.
Right. And
I
arguably,
I just combined three different complaints into one sentence. But yeah, I mean, mainly the fact that, like, in Space Babies and Church on Ruby Road, we saw, okay, this is Ruby really showing why she can be a companion. She can stand neck and neck with the Doctor. This specific incident that you've been describing is basically showing why Ruby cannot stand with the Doctor. Because there's no way the Doctor could be aware of that happening and be like, but I might, I might lose the element of surprise if I were to help this woman.
Right. Like there's the Doctor like messing with Ace because he needs things to happen for the villain to thing, but even he wouldn't do that.
Right.
Like there's like, and like, I don't know why, but you
way.
might seem, like I don't know why you would, but some people might bring up like human nature, family of blood, and it's like, well, no, that's different because he doesn't even remember who he is. He's still putting Martha in a dodgy situation because of, the everything of being a black woman at that point in England, but it's still like not as he never went there with Martha in that. So why are we doing this here with Marty, kind of a thing? Like, again, if this was a Torchwood episode, it would still kind of irk me a bit, but it's Torchwood. I would expect that.
But even
from
like
the more adult
even
show.
Jack, who became like the pragmatic, like, sometimes I have to do terrible evil shit for the sake of humanity. Even he would have stepped in about that happening.
Well, I mean, he still has Owen on his team, and in literally the first episode, Owen drugs two people to have sex with him. So I don't know. I feel
Fair
like
point.
he just kind of lets that slide. I mean, to be fair, he also didn't know it was happening, but he doesn't chastise him when he finds out. So it's like, I mean, that's Russell at his worst. So this is a lot better written than that. So, but it's still like,
and this like this came up with the discourse of the Harley Quinn Valentine's Day special. There is, the argument of whether like pheromone induced stuff is consensual or not. And I'm not trying to invoke that as a discussion here, but I'm saying it's entirely possible that Jack is like, oh, these people consensually chose to do this. And I'm not, again, I don't want to get into a discussion about whether he's right or wrong, but that could be, within his character to not step in. Whereas in this case, I think it's very clearly you can't use that argument.
Yeah, like the only reason that what happens in this episode doesn't just ruin Ruby as a character for me moving forward is the fact that the episode basically says, nah, the Ruby who did that no longer exists. So
Are we sure Stephen Moffat didn't write this episode? All right. At the risk
Yeah.
of going into every possible thing wrong with
Right,
the
yeah.
episode, let's move on to Matt.
Yeah.
Ah, yes. I mentioned this
I hope we didn't
earlier.
trample whatever. Okay.
No. I mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to stick to my guns. What a waste of a good episode. Literally ends in a undo button. Again, I'm
Yeah.
really sure this wasn't written by Moffat.
Okay, so we kind of segued into yours.
Yeah. Like, literally, the entire mystery ends up being that it's her somehow stuck in this weird unaging form of her warning, trying to give off warnings and spooking people. And it's literally her just in the end of all things, just warning her original self at the very beginning of the fucking episode not to step on a thing.
And of course,
Seriously?
there's the huge question of, was this a complete ass pull, or are we going to find out in the finale that she's some sort of god with time travel powers?
If the later is true, I'd say that the show is becoming even more broken.
The later would have to be true for this ending to make sense, because otherwise, how?
Because
Right.
it's shit. It's
Like-
garbage writing.
Yeah.
A regular
it
human-
literally takes an entirely good episode with some interesting stuff going on and then spins it on its head and completely 180 and kicks it out the door without even a
Yeah.
promise or a prayer.
A regular human being can't send herself back in time
Right.
or teleport.
Magic, Bill. Magic. Even though
And
it
that's
doesn't
what I'm
exist.
She has to be magic. You know, her character has to be more magic than just the snow for any of this to make any sense.
Again, that's entirely the problem of this ending is that it's complete total BS and a reset button that doesn't make sense.
Like apparently this is just effectively playing into that whole toy maker logic is still operating.
Oh yeah, the whole season
therefore
is
so the fairies are real, I guess, now. And so disturbing the fairy circle.
Fairies, goblins, toy
legitimately
maker,
set the soul
and
off.
the maestro.
Yeah, at this point we've had we've had kind of a fairy tale, thing, technology that shouldn't really work. We've had the maestro. Boom actually did not really do any supernatural that I can remember.
Yeah, Boom was the most grounded.
Supernatural.
Unless you would say like the father of powerhood overcame like the technology, but that's really that's something Doctor Who would do normally without needing.
Yeah, that's still a bit of a reach. It's still technically
Yeah.
Right. But then this, you have this is super supernatural. It's and I think if it were just like a movie that's not Doctor Who, we could say, okay, it's not explained, and that's the scary thing about it. And I think people are making that argument. But we have to live with Ruby Sunday, right? We see her every week. And by the way, I think the time skip should have been after this instead of before it, but that's a separate argument. So the fact that we're continuing to see Ruby every week says we need an explanation. It doesn't have to be a complete explanation, right? I mean, we've lived with the Doctor for all this time. The Doctor is never completely explained. That's fine. But there needs to be enough explanation that this makes some sort of sense.
Right. And I feel like in some case, if a literal only change was that somehow the Ruby of the past, even though what was happened was undone, that she somehow gained the memories of that experience and had to live with that moving forward, that probably would have softened it a bit. But the fact that it's just complete reset is just so what was the point then?
You know what I think would have helped it for me? Remember how there's the older Ruby who went back to the TARDIS to kind of just talk to the TARDIS? If she had turned around and accidentally broken a fairy circle instead of going off and living old enough to be going to the hospital, if she had broken a fairy circle then and been like, oh shit, that's me over there, Like that would at least it would have been an explanation, other than somehow she could send herself back in time.
Hmm.
All right, so
Yeah.
time to get to me.
Mhm.
So I'm going to say, and this is where I can't really praise the writing. There's a few different allegories that it seems like they're going for, and then completely drop the ball. So at times it looks like they're going for an anxiety allegory, right? All the things with the
Mm.
like there's all the boyfriends talking about how she's constantly distracted. She can't, she's never in the moment. It really
Mm.
seems like they're going with a sort of, and yes, for all the bad things about him, there's also good things about his writing. It seems going down a Lovecraftian angle where this constant stress is driving her to madness. But it's only
Mm.
ever represented as can't hold down a boyfriend, and then it goes away. It's like that's no longer part of the plot.
Mm.
She no longer has anxiety about the woman. The woman is almost as if it were a completely different writer from that point on. There's also even like at the very beginning, before the anxiety part, it seems like they're doing a stigma allegory, right? Ruby is stigmatized; she can't do anything about it. People are punishing her for things that aren't really within her control. And you could write a really interesting story about that, and then they completely drop the ball again.
Yeah.
About halfway through, that is no longer part of the story. In fact, nobody talks to the woman again until Ruby wants them to. She gets all of a sudden has complete control over that aspect of her problem
Mm.
for some reason.
Yeah.
So I just think the writing dropped a lot of balls. I don't know if it was just they kind of wrote it. I'm not going to say sloppily, but you don't necessarily start off with themes before you start writing.
Right.
But then usually after you've done a draft or two, you're like, oh, this is a theme that really fits with what I'm writing. As a writer, I'm going to develop that, especially a
Mm.
very seasoned writer like Russell T Davies, who has the
Yeah.
skill and experience to notice these things. So that's where it really stands out that like these themes are touched on and then completely dropped as if they're
Mm.
so unintentional that Russell has to play hot potato and jump to another theme.
Yeah. I mean, one of my backup ones, if I hadn't gone for what I went with, was effectively going to be that in the sense of like, what is this episode about? This feels like a concept was come up with, and then yeah, it was just never
Mhm.
really developed beyond that. It's like if Boom had literally been, hey, the doctor's on a mine, let's stretch that out for 50 minutes, and there's no theming aside. It's just
Right.
the doctor stuck on a landmine for 15 minutes. What are we gonna
Exactly.
do with that?
In
Like,
in my
and
notes, I have the word shallow written so many times because if you turn off your brain and watch this, you get all the atmosphere and all the good things we talked about. But the more you think about it, the more is lacking, or the more is just
Hmm,
wrong with it.
yeah.
All right, let's move on to favorite scenes. Alex, got a favorite scene?
um, I think I'm gonna go with uh the I mean, I feel like there's a few from just one stretch of the episode that I can go with, but I'll pick just the one. And that's I mean, I like the writing of it because it's a bit of a misdirect, and that's I don't have my card on me. Can I pay with my phone? What do you mean pay with your phone? Because to me, the writing for that is setting up, ooh, is she in modern day Wales? Or is
Right.
this like we're set in the past? And then it's like, nah, I'm just fucking with you.
Yeah, then it turns out that the people in the pub have a chip on their shoulder and are
Yeah.
taking it out on Ruby.
Mm. Like just it was a funny little bit of just like, oh wait, shit, are we in the past? And she's not really even considering that, but she's just like,
Right.
oh, can pay for my phone this way. And then they're like, yeah, you can, you fucking idiot.
All right, Matt.
Hmm. So favorite scene. There's a couple of good ones. I'm trying to think. Oh, you know what? The obvious one in the room, I guess. Scaring the asshole. Just this tense moment of her slowly dragging it out. All of a sudden, everything pauses. He leans over, starts talking, freaks out, tosses his script, and just starts running off the stage. And people start booking it to follow. And
I
literally,
thought
it just
about-
ends with him shouting, "You talk to her! You talk to her!"
I thought about choosing that one, and it's my biggest issue with that is that it contradicts another scene, which I'm sure be mentioning later. But yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty decent for a climax.
Yeah, it's a nice
it's a
ending
climax
to
that doesn't
getting
really
rid of
go
him.
anywhere in terms of the actual conflict.
Mhm.
But it's a decent climax for what it is, for sure. So I left this blank in my notes because I was trying to come up with what my favorite scene is, and I think I'm going to go with that time passing boyfriends montage, mostly because of the directing. It's very very good to look at. It kind of really shows where Ruby is with like, she's like toasting the woman. She's constantly like veering off mid conversation to look at her and things like that. So it really it really kind of shows how she's living her life throughout this time. And the first time I watched it, I didn't realize. I thought it was just many different conversations with one boyfriend before she broke up with him. And then I realized, no, these are 3 different breakup scenes.
And probably spread out like years apart, I would assume,
Right.
given that she ends
Yeah.
up at like 41, 42 by the end of it.
Right. All right. Worst scenes, Alex. By the way, so far we've spent less than 10 minutes talking about things we like about the episode, and we've spent 15 minutes talking about things we dislike about the episode without getting into worse scenes.
Yeah. I mean, this one I'll be able to just get through pretty quick because it's just part of the main issue, and that's mainly just and like I basically said it to like Bill and DMs, is that when she's apologizing to Marty when Ruby's apologizing to Marty before going out on the field to do the thing to
Yep.
scare off the politician, it feels very, I'm sorry I let that happen to you, but I didn't know when I was going to be able to get an opportunity to do this and whatever. So it's basically like, yeah, I'm sorry I let him abuse you, but well, the plot had to move forward, so I couldn't.
You weren't important enough.
Yeah, it just felt very, and even the apology, like it's from a distance. She's not like going up to her and giving like a really heartfelt kind of
Yeah.
apology. It's just like, oh, by the way, sorry that happened to you. Like that's like it just doesn't sit right with me.
And again, I think that if they were really going with like the being driven mad angle to the point where like she is becoming the monster by the end, and that's why she becomes the person who's able to like scare people away by talking to them, that would almost make sense. Like we're seeing like a dark, twisted version of Ruby, but that's not the
Right.
angle they ended up going with.
Right.
All right, Matt, your least favorite scene. I have two choices, so feel free.
I was
to
just
pick what you
thinking of it,
want.
now I just lost it. Dang it. Least favorite. Frick. Where was my brain? I had it for a moment and then I lost it.
Do you remember what the topic was? The subplot?
It completely blanked on me now. Damn it. Might have to come back to me on that one.
Okay. So I'll go ahead. I'll say my
Mm.
first scene, and then if you still don't come up with yours, I'll say my second.
All right.
So the least favorite scene was the "You're not my daughter, even your real mother didn't want you."
Oh.
This is one that I was talking with Alex in private about, but yeah, it's so completely unnecessary to the episode. It's never resolved because the type of story is telling. There's none of that. None of the things are resolved.
Right.
And it actively makes things worse because it reinforces the idea that adoptive families are fake. Yes, referencing the adoptive family is part of the ongoing plot of the season, but this is going directly against the message of the other episodes. So, like in Space Babies, you had, yes, I'm going to visit my real mom, and she goes to Carla. Here you have Carla saying, nah, you're not even worth, you're an abandoned child. Nobody wants you. Nobody loves you. And we were talking about this in the context of like, it almost feels like there should be like content warnings on these episodes. Because even if this is, yes, it's a fantasy story. Carla is being influenced by something we still don't understand, by magic of some sort. But like, especially, this is a show that children watch with their families. And we're still on, given the fact that it's not Torchwood, that's kind of the expectation that people from all ages are going to be watching this. And, so you're going to have adoptive children watching this scene, and it's going to undo all the good that the other episodes are doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, if the episode was driven by Ruby's anxieties and her worries about herself and how other people perceive her and something like that, then maybe that would work. But that's literally the only time anyone ever gives her shit is that one instance. And like, maybe you could argue the boyfriend's all saying, oh, you're distant. Are you cheating on me? Blah, blah, blah. But like, that goes by so quickly. And it's like, if it was about like, depression, like, what your brain can trick you into thinking people think about you. If it was about that kind of a thing, that would make sense. But yeah, as you've said, like, throughout, it's like, it felt like he had too many ideas and was throwing all of them in rather than trying to like have a through line.
Oh, sorry if I didn't remember it now, by the way.
Okay.
So the scene in the hospital room, just as we see the thing enter the room and doing the weird motions that it always does, my brain immediately clicked and went, oh, F me. It's her. This thing that's been following her the entire time is actually her, and this is not going to be a pleasant ending, is it? Please, Russell, at least make sense. Nope. Yeah, that one got me. That was literally the moment that the episode got me, and I'm like, oh, this has just been a waste of time. God damn it.
Yeah. And yeah, that scene is again completely unexplained. She is no longer staying 73 yards away. We don't know why.
Yeah.
It literally would have been better if it was just a faceless monster thing. It literally would have been better. But no, it's just, nah.
All right, so now my backup scene is the conversation about perception filters. Because not only does it contradict everything we know about how the TARDIS's chameleon circuit works, we've never had the issue of people ignoring the TARDIS, but it actually interferes with the internal logic of the episode. Because if what Ruby says about the woman having a perception filter is true, Roger Ap Williams should never have the notion to start a conversation with her. He should kind of see her and then kind of ignore her. But instead, she pops up, and without prompting, Ruby doesn't need to do anything. He immediately starts having a conversation with her, which is exactly what would not happen based on the conversation between Ruby and Kate.
Yeah. And plus, like, there have been, like, I'm pretty sure Russell himself, I'm pretty sure, wrote episodes where it's like, oh, people just think it's some random bit of street art or something that someone's just randomly popped up this old police box or something. It's just, it's just a thing. So it is weird that, yeah, we're trying to be like, no, the perception filter is it looking like a TARDIS.
Right. I
And
mean,
the
it looking
perception
like a
filter
police
is,
box, you mean?
yeah, that it looking like a police box. And like the perception filter is supposed to change it to fit as brought up in fucking Space Babies.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's the perception filter is broken, so it is just stuck as a police box. So yeah, that is kind of weird that he just yeah, I don't know. It's just so weird that the guy who was on his second run of show running would. I felt like he just kind of threw that in to like as a prompt to bring it up relating to the woman
Mm-hmm.
when you could have just brought that up without it anyway. Of like,
Bringing,
because yeah,
bringing
she
it
has
up
a
in the
way to bring
first
it up.
place ruined the internal logic of the episode anyway.
Well, right, yeah.
All
I
right.
mean, yeah,
Go
like
ahead.
you don't even have to explain with perception filter. You could just be like, well, it's, who's gonna notice her unless she's pointed out, because people can just be like that rather than
Mm-hmm.
needing to be a perception filter.
Right. All right, on to final thoughts. Alex.
I've honestly seen people who, to be fair, have probably only watched it the once, and just are gonna have different hang-ups to me, say that this is their favorite so far. And yeah, I can't agree with that. Like, it's is it the worst? No, but it is not the best by like any stretch. I would honestly, for all the issues I have with the Devil's Court in some places, I would actually put this under that. But above Space Babies, because this has kind of like Space Babies. This doesn't really know what it wants to do. It's just, here's a fun premise, let's go. Right. Like, I'd say better written than Space Babies, but, it's still like, what's. Like, did it have to have, like, a moral necessarily? No, but it also doesn't really have a theme beyond the premise.
Mm-hmm.
So, it just kind of like, well, that was fun, I guess. This probably could have just been anything else. I mean, like, again, like, well, I brought up Torchwood in like another like outside of the podcast first, and then immediately realized, oh my god, if this had been a Torchwood episode featuring Gwen, that would have worked,
Mm-hmm.
because she has people to lose. She has family, a baby, Reese,
Yep.
the Torchwood team. Like, to have that,
Well, not
like,
anymore.
well, yeah, but but like, she has people. And like, that one cop she's buddies with, like, she has people in her life that she could have this happen to, and that would absolutely break her. And God knows Torchwood loved breaking Gwen. So like, that would have really worked, and they probably would have taken it further emotionally as well. But and like, while I don't think Gwen would have let the Marty thing happen either, in a Torchwood setting where everything's a bit more morally grey, I could see a version of Gwen that would either let that happen and just feel really shit about it. But, I could generally see that happening, and me having an issue with it, but at least it's Torchwood, so I'm expecting this kind of stuff, rather than Doctor Who, where I'm like, could we not, please? But yeah, it's like if this had been like actually had something that it wanted to say, like not even like a political point, but just a point. Like again, a theming. Because like again, yeah, it just feels like it's all over the place with what it wants to convey. So yeah, it's just like if this was a one-off thing with a one-off character. Honestly, if this had been more like Blink, where this was someone that we've never met, maybe they'll come back, but otherwise whatever. It probably would have worked a bit better. Or like I will
Yeah.
admit, I called this being Ruby the whole time. Like the second she shows up, I'm like, oh, that's Ruby. Like like I was waiting to see if that would actually be the case, and then when it was, I was like, oh yeah, called it. I didn't necessarily assume that it would be old lady Ruby, but that it would be like an older-ish version of Ruby. So it was like the twist didn't really hit me because it was just like, oh yeah, I kind of called this as soon as she showed up. But yeah, this needed. I'll put it this way: this is a clear-cut example of why Russell shouldn't be writing 6 out of 8 episodes. Because if he'd had more time to write this, or had basically just gone, "Here's an idea I have. Here, you write it."
Yeah.
Like he does like a first draft, and then hands it off to someone else, and they do something with it. Like, that would have made more sense. Because to be honest, I feel like this should have been written by a woman. And this is like just occurring to me right now. This should have been handed off to a female writer to write. Because I feel like that could have worked really well. Or at the very least, co-written, if we're doing it that way. Like, say what you will about Chibnall era. Demons of the Punjab and Rosa had people from those backgrounds involved in the writing process. So, you know, that kind of a situation where it's like bring in a woman to write this who is a competent writer, so not just anyone, but, you know, to do that probably would have ended up being a better episode. So we'll see how we go, but that does seem to be the thing of like a lot of the Russell episodes could have been much better, but because he's writing, you know, what? Well, yeah, like 6 out of 8. I was going to come up with a fraction, but my brain kind of died on me.
9,
But yeah.
Oh, actually, considering that they're counting the Christmas special from last season as part of the from last year as part of this season, he's writing 7 out of 10.
Yeah. So yeah, it's yeah, definitely, and yeah, this is just another example of, for God's sake, Russell, just hand stuff off to other people, please. Yeah, that's a battle I've got, so we'll move on so I don't tangent more.
All right, Matt, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts is that this was actually a story that had some interesting grounding going into it, some decent character stuff going on here and there, and then ultimately just pretty much botched the landing. The landing was botched. As a matter of fact, so hard that it's going to cost it points. So that's my general basic on it. It's a shame. There was a lot of really good stuff that could have been kept here, but no.
All right. So I already read some of my final thought notes, but I'll just still go through everything I wrote. So when I view this shallowly, I really like it. The directing is top notch. It sets a mood perfectly. The lighting and camera work and acting are all brilliant. But the more closely I look at the story, the more it just looks like something rotten. It addresses multiple themes so shallowly that it looks like they're mistakes and that there's no effort to flesh them out. Ruby becomes a person who's willing to act the villain for months or years and overlook people in harm because she loses all faith in her ability to do anything by herself without relying on the woman. Then we cut farther forward, and it's clear that that political drama had nothing to do with the actual story. It was just an event that happened in her life. It's possible that this story ties into the larger season arc, and that it foreshadows something in the final, in which case, maybe I'll come back and revise this score when the time comes. Until then, I find myself more bothered by this episode than anything. And since it never came up, did we really need a reference to a slur in the pub?
Mm.
It's like, yes, I know the other F slur is not considered a slur in Britain, but that one clearly is. All right. Ratings.
Ooh, this is gonna be interesting because I've been mulling this over. Like, there's a lot that still brings it up, but this was never gonna get full marks from me, so I'm trying to figure out where it falls. God. You know what? I was gonna be nice, but some things just bug me way too much. So I'm going to be slightly mean and put this on par with Space Baby, so I'm giving this a 3.5.
That was above average mean. I mean,
In
granted,
the
that's
sense that,
probably
like,
below
oh
our
yeah,
actual average, but
like there's enough to still bring it up from being too mean and going lower than that. But yeah.
okay. Matt, what's your thought? Your rating?
You ain't mean. Every good part of this story ends up being wasted in the end. 2.5.
So I was thinking of giving it a dead middle of the road 3.0 because of the very good directing and acting. But the more I think on this story and the more I talk about it, the less I like it, and I just have to give it something below a 3.0. So I'm going to agree with Matt. This is 2.5.
So good and just absolutely wasted. And good and bad parts all included, but then that last bad one just ruins it.
So that makes this a 2.83. So if I go to the rankings, out of 473 things reviewed, this would be number 418. It is on par with The Crimson Horror and Death Comes to Time. Well, that's a special still, but it is not as good as The Horns of Nyman, Vampires in Venice, or Time of the Doctor. And it is better than Voyage of the Damned, Revenge of the Cybermen, Delta and the Bannermen, and Angels Take Manhattan. Since we were talking about Torchwood, we've got this as not as good as Something Borrowed or Combat, and better than Greeks Bearing Gifts. So that is what we have to say about 73 yards. We have 5 to 10 minutes to give maybe some very quick predictions. Alex, any one or two things you predict for the next episode or the rest of the season?
Not that I can really think of, because I legitimately have no clue where the stuff with the actress Susan Twist is going. Like, it's gonna be something, especially because now we're getting to the point where Ruby actively acknowledged, "Hey, wait a minute, you look familiar." But and like we finally saw Mrs. Flood again, so I guess we're making her relevant again because we're halfway through. But like, yeah, like the only kind of speculation I have is just that I'm hoping that we will have all of this explained and written out by the time we finish, so like we can move on from the toy maker logic stuff. Because like I have to believe this is maybe him going like, "Oh, I'll allow myself to do this for a season, and then I'll write it out as
You
like
think Russell has that
explaining it away."
restraint? Uh,
I mean, he's always kind of played around with being bad at having like no limitations within certain parameters anyway, even like back before he allowed himself this kind of thing. But I could see him basically just being like, I'll do this so I can set up this season and have some fun with it, and then ride it out.
I'm thinking this is his gimmick and why he was willing to come back to Doctor Who until he leaves the show again.
Could be. I guess like my assumption at the moment is that whatever fallout there is with the one who waits will somehow like close up whatever thing opened up to allow the toy maker and the maestro and etc. through. And then like we'll move on from there. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
It's like I'll put it this way: it's getting a bit lost in the sense of like you've got so much set up for what's going to happen. How much of this is actually going to be resolved this season?
Well,
and
I was
how
going to
much
say
is
they
gonna
already
be-
said that this is a 2-season arc, at least parts of it.
So yeah, it's a matter of trying to figure out, okay, what are we long gaming and what is actually being resolved at the end of this? Like, is Susan Twist going to be the one who waits? Like, whatever character she ends up being by the end of it is like, is it going to be her that's been the one who waits and and that's why she's cameoed in every episode so far.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know.
Matt, what prediction do you have?
I'm worried my main one, isn't so much predictions on the show so much as it is, oh no, please don't keep being disappointing. It feels, thankfully, at least Boom was a bit better, but it feels like almost every other episode is like this, me just sitting here going, oh, why did you do that? You could have been so much better. It only takes a few things to fix it. Why did you do that? That undermined everything. Why? Yeah, and it's really upsetting because I was actually really genuinely hopeful that Russell will bring things back around, and it doesn't seem like it's gonna happen, sadly for me. It is starting to bring up me questioning other things, but I'm not going to threaten any kind of like leaving the show or anything. And even if I did if I decided to stop watching more Modern Who, I'd still come back for like if we're doing Big Finish stuff. It's just that I'm really kind of sitting here going, please just fix the show. Please just be good. I just want it to be good. And it's just, I'm tired of mediocrity. This used to be so much better, and it's just so disappointing. Outside of that, as for the side stuff going on, I don't know. It does feel like they're plotting something with the I keep forgetting her name, the actress that keeps showing up. I'm kind of wondering.
Susan Twist.
Susan Twist. I'm wondering if maybe if she's not Ruby, if maybe she's actually Ruby's mom or something.
I'm going to take that as a segue into my prediction, because my prediction is that Susan Twist is Ruby's mom, and that she did something, whether putting herself under like an equivalent of a chameleon arc or something like that, to hide herself and Ruby from the one who waits, who's possibly Ruby's father. That's my. Also, I think Dot and Bubble will give us little to nothing, very little or absolutely nothing to actually answering those questions.
Given it looks like they're potentially not in it that much, that would make sense that it probably won't.
All right, and that is what we have to say about 73 Yards. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this week's episode. And don't forget to like the video if you've listened this far. Subscribe on YouTube to get our exports each week, or follow us on Twitch to get notified when we stream. Next time, we continue the new season of Doctor Who with Dot and Bubble, written by Russell T. Davies, and starring Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor and Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday. We'll see you then.